Okay.
Oh,
I think that was it.
I heard someone.
All
Now
right.
recorded.
Okay, cool. All right. Perfect. So everyone, welcome. This is just going to be our meeting to refresh everyone's memory and kind of keep up to date on our kind of PR focused project for the class. And I will go ahead and just bring up the agenda and then I'll do like a little roll call that you'll see reflected in the agenda as well. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Does everyone see the agenda?
Yes.
Wonderful. So here we have our just like basic outlined agenda. So our roles for this meeting, I will be the facilitator. So I'll kind of lead us through. I'm also going to be doing the introduction and the internships and kind of the wrap up of the meeting. Ella is going to go ahead and talk about the background of a PR track. JC is going to be talking about career in PR. Allison is going to be the job interview components. Savannah is going to be the alternative career and more interviews from Paisley from actual PR professionals and people in the field. So, like I said, welcome. And yeah, so Ella, if you want to go ahead and have your little speak, would you like me to keep up the agenda? Do you have a
Um,
preference?
you can if you want. It's fine with me if that's
Okay, cool. I'll
helpful.
just leave it up.
Okay, so I'll be talking about the background of PR and its history, and there is a ton of information, so I'm kind of having to cherry pick like what seems the most relevant. Um, so it started, I'm going to start with talking about like how it started in like more ancient times, like with the Greeks. They kind of solidified the idea of like public communication. And then moving on to things like the printing press and how information was more widespread and accessible. And then early America, and when it was used when it came to independence from the British, there were lots of like public figures that were sending out information regarding that, and especially that first election in the U.S. And then someone who's noted in almost every single timeline I found is P.T. Barnum, who was the founder of like the circus. He used publicity stunts to get people like journalists and newspapers talking about what he was doing. And so that was kind of the first specific use of public relations. And then Ivy Ledbetter Lee is one of the industry's founding fathers, and he presented the idea that the public needed to have a direct communication with a company or an organization rather than just getting it from like general news outlets. And then Edward L. Bernays, crystallizing public opinion, and that's the concept of people working in public relations, communicating to from the public to the client, but also the client to the public, so both directions. And then the 1940s and 50s, specifically after World War II, saw a lot of public relations kind of spike. And that's also when radio was becoming more popular as well as TV. So it became more popular as a career since it was much more accessible. And then obviously after that, we have the birth of the internet, which just absolutely skyrocketed it. And then social media in more recent years has added a completely other layer to it as a whole and changed it quite a lot since then.
Amazing. Awesome. JC, do you want to talk
Um,
about your feeling?
could you possibly stop sharing the screen? I took my notes on a document and I can't pull it up if. Okay. All right. I'm going to be going through each of our different career intentions. The first one, Madeline is planning on working for either a nonprofit or for-profit campaign, like campaigning for a firm. In these firms, you develop and execute campaigns, and they can look similar for both nonprofit and for-profit. It just depends on what type of organization you want to work for. These positions strive to enhance a client's public image and achieve specific goals. So, depending on what they're wanting to do, what image they're wanting to push out, decides the type of work you would be doing with these clients. These positions require a well-rounded list of skills, including writing, media relations, crisis management, social media, event planning. These people create press releases and build relationships with the clients that they work with and monitor media coverage, analyze the public opinion to see what is and isn't working for their specific campaign. The next career is Savannah's. Savannah plans on doing PR and marketing for a university. There are many positions an individual can hold within like a PR marketing team at a university, some of which being a director of communications, PR manager, specialist, marketing specialist, integrated marketing communication manager. In these positions, individuals communicate between all departments in the university to retrieve important information about communication throughout the university, make sure communication between the different departments is clear. These teams come together to make sure important news and information are sent out across students and faculty. So different newsletters and stuff being sent out across emails across campus. The next job is Ella. She would like to do PR for a publishing or literary agency. These are kind of like the other nonprofit or for-profit firms we were talking about, but they specify in working with book publishing and specific authors. They build relationships with an author's brand, generating publicity for their books, and gathering people towards their social media accounts through strategic media outreach and event planning. The next career is Allison. Allison plans on being a public information officer for a disaster relief organization. These individuals serve as a crucial link between emergency first responders and the public, making sure there's accurate and important information getting sent out to the public. They gather, verify, coordinate, disseminate this information, and make sure it's sent out not only accurately, but in a timely manner. You don't want to hear news from 4 months ago happening. My job, I plan on being a social media content manager. This is where I would develop and execute strategies to boost a company's online presence. I would work with them, see what kind of message or values that an individual company or maybe person has, and design posts on different social media platforms or things for their personal website to be sent out and engaged with from their audience. Scheduling is a very big skill in this career, and you have to be well versed in multiple different social media platforms. The final career is Paisley's, and Paisley would like to do PR for a hospital. This is much like doing it for a university, except you're working in the medical field. You would craft official statements to attract qualified candidates, generate positive publicity for the different hospitals, and you're responsible for shaping, maintaining the organization's public image.
Awesome. Now I think it's back to me for internships and PR, if I'm not mistaken. I was just going to focus on 2 local and then 2 non-local, kind of go into brief detail about them with the class, how, there's opportunities here, but there's also opportunities in many other states if they're interested. How to apply, I was going to kind of show where the majority of our PR focused, and even just the communications website in general, where they have internships and job opportunities, and kind of just walk through all of that. And then I was going to also talk about my own experience with my internship over the previous, like last summer, and how I learned a lot and kind of how to meld yourself into an actual office setting when it comes to PR, and how classes are great and they're lots of fun to learn, but actually applying it is something that is uniquely its own. So to kind of just get everyone prepared in that sense, but that was kind of my like general layout of what I was going to do. And yeah, there's not much else to it other than that. After me, I believe it was Allison with kind of the job interview components for PR.
Yes, hi. So I broke mine down into 2 to 3 separate steps. So for the job interview components, I focus mainly on like research preparation and then like the actual interview itself. So if I wanted to like focus on like you should really research your company or whoever you plan to work for because a university or a nonprofit organization have different requirements for PR. And then I had questions that you may be asked during an interview. I got these off of Indeed for like most likely to be asked for PR positions, as well as skills that you should or are most likely should have in your resume. And then for presentation, I was going to go over important like nonverbals for public speaking for your interview, as well as like appropriate attire and professional clothing, kind of just like the basics of interview stuff.
Awesome. That's all very makes sense. After that, we have Savannah with alternative careers.
Yes, so I want to place an emphasis on tourism. There are a few other routes I could go, like outside of tourism, but I think like in this area, Explore Asheville and Discover Jackson County are pretty prevalent organizations that like you wouldn't realize are PR because they are more like hospitality based, but very heavily do involve public relations. And then also personally, I'm interested in using PR in like a religious organization. So maybe exploring that, like how different people can approach that. And then I don't know how this is going to show up on the screen, but in Stillwell, there's non-traditional careers in communication. It's probably backwards for everyone, but I want to maybe see if I can get a copy of this that's not like my own picture of it and incorporate it, and then just like tap more into that. So there's also a very big like political like role in PR, like the political science route, government. So just placing an emphasis on the different routes you can take, and then maybe like having three or four of those big topics like hospitality, tourism, um, religious occupation, and then like get into the nitty-gritty of like, okay, well, what are these actual roles? Um, like finding examples like job openings. That way, it's pretty tangible and obvious and includes a job description. But other than that, that's pretty much all I have with that.
I think that's a nice detailed route for it though.
Okay.
So I like it. Next we have Paisley, who is in charge of our interviews.
Hi. So far I've only completed one of the two interviews, and I interviewed Dr. Vincent Russell. I didn't know he had a doctorate until then, but that's cool. He's not actually directly involved in the role of PR, but he is very heavily involved in communications. And I wanted to see how his experiences in communications ties into what we would be doing as PR, because he did do a lot of things that like borderline PR, and I wanted to compare that to my other interviewee will be Professor Deborah Connolly. And it was interesting because he had a lot of things that he did, like job interviews and things like that for communications positions that would be exactly the same for PR. So I wanted to tie those things together. That and I had some questions that I thought were really interesting. Can you hear that? My computer's like blowing up. I don't know how to mute it. Anyways, my favorite question that I had prepared is if you could talk to your past self, what advice would you give them for like the smoothest transition into the career path? And he had some really interesting answers because he said that he wished he had gotten involved in a lot more when he was in school, like doing more clubs, doing more like getting more involved when it comes to like group projects, things like that. And I feel like that's interesting because that kind of ties into what we're doing right now, getting involved in everything like that. Um, and again, I'm very excited to interview Professor Connolly because that'll give us a lot more details about PR specific things. But that's what I have so far. So
I think that's two like really nice dualism between the two. So I think that I'm apologize if you guys hear them doing maintenance outside of my apartment. What are the odds? Um, but I think that's a really good start. And Deb is like very all-knowing when it comes to PR. So I'm sure she'll love to kind of combat his more like unique approach. But I think that's pretty much everyone's sections, if I'm not mistaken. I can try and bring up the schedule, like the agenda again real quick, just so all of us can have a quick little refresh, if it'll allow me to. Bit finicky. Um, but yeah, so hopefully everyone sees that again. But so just for our kind of next meeting, I know it might not be through Zoom, it might be in person, whatever works for everyone in the future. But kind of, and fall break is obviously next week, but setting up some slides that we can all kind of start creating our own little sections on and kind of putting down all this amazing information to, actually to be something cohesive and something that we'll be really proud to present. But yeah, so this is again just our little rundown. We talked about each of our little sections. We all had our roles in them. And does anyone have any questions? No? Everyone feel good? Awesome. I'll stop sharing. Okay, well, I think that's pretty much it. I'll go ahead and submit the agenda and kind of just make sure everyone's on the same page. And then Savannah, if you want to go ahead and submit the recording, and we should be all good. But if anyone has any questions or anything, the group message text is there. So awesome.
Right. Thanks, Madeline, for facilitating.
Of course, it was a
Thanks,
pleasure.
guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
y'all. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.